Too is and this is something that hit me when I was studying for tonight's Bible study. If y'all want to join my Bible study, today is not necessarily a Bible study. This is more of life things, empowerment things, things that you can apply to your life, your business, etc. But one of the things that you'll notice if you go back to Genesis, right? Before anything was planted, before there was any plants or anything, that you needed God had a dry space of land, a dry space of land. And sometimes, and I don't know if you guys know this, if you ever planted a garden or anything like that, you can't plant where there's already a lot of stuff there. And it may sound simple when I say it, but you can't plant anything if there's already a bunch of stuff happening and taking up space. There's no room for that thing to grow. And so sometimes when you're trying to grow, you're trying to live your life. And I promise you, we're going to get into the topic, but this hit me last night. And I was like, Lord, that makes perfect sense. Everything, like we can look at how God creates anything, nature, and see, like, make sense of a process. And so you may find yourself in a dry place and you think it's bad because you think of dry, it's hot, is this, is that, or whatever, right? But think about if you're going to plant any sort of flowers, food, cabbage, grass, anything like that. Do they plant, if you get some new grass laid down, do they plant it when when the ground is wet and there's already grass there? No. The first thing they do is dig up everything that's in that place, and they just want it to be a clean slate. And it looks ugly. That's when you see the quality of your dirt, you see everything, and then they lay the new grass down. It's the same thing if you're going to plant cabbage or something like that. You can't plant it on top of weeds. You can't plant it on top of flowers. You can't plant it on top of anything. So what do you have to do? You got to tear some stuff out. You got to clear some space out, make it real even, real low. You don't want it to be rocks there. You don't want to be anything that's there. And you're creating this dry place. But what a dry place does is it allows for something to be planted there. So you don't put seed down and everything's all, no. When you go and buy, soil and all that other stuff, it ain't mud. It ain't soaking wet when you get it, right? It's a little dry. Doesn't mean it's dried out completely, but it's either dried out or just a little moist. And then you go and plant there. And so sometimes you'll pray, you'll be doing all this stuff. You're ready for change to happen. You're making the necessary changes to your character, your life, all of these different things. And you're wondering, why is nothing happening? And really what's happening is that God is clearing out space, right? And I say that because God's not a hoarder. And he's intentional, he's scientific, he understands how things work. And you can't plant something new on top of old and old and old and old and old. It's the same thing with relationships. I didn't meet my husband until I had already cut off everybody else. When there was no one else in my life. When I was like, anyone that I had dated, anything, I was like, I'm completely done. I don't want nothing old. Nothing. I wasn't thinking about whether or not I could have made it work with, I'm just making up names, Edgar, whomever, right? I wasn't thinking about any of that stuff. I was like, really, I was in the mindset of, Lord, if it's just me and you in here, I'm good. Because I was tired, boss. I am tired, tired, tired. So before we get into today, the reason I say that is sometimes it's hard. Sometimes the hardest part of life is when you decide to do better and you make the decision, and we expect for everything to just sprout immediately. When really, once you make the decision, you got to create space. You got to create space. You got to create space in your spirit. You have to create space in your soul and your mind, your will, emotions. You got to tear out some things, tear out some old thorns. You got to heal. You got to do all of these things so that way, whatever you have going on in your life doesn't choke out the harvest. You don't want any weeds there that choke out the harvest. The other day I planted some, well, this is a few years ago. I planted some blackberries and blackberries came. And I was like, why my blackberries aren't growing? I looked down in there. There was all kind of weeds and stuff in there. Some little baby pine trees had grown up around. I said, oh no, 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 no. Soon as I pulled all that stuff up, I see that my blackberry bush is blooming now. And once you start seeing the blooms, right, it's starting to look a little pretty. Next thing you know, the fruit is going to come. So y'all, please like up the live, like and share the live. We're going to get into this today. And today we're talking about how your identity impacts everything. How your identity, how you define yourself impacts everything. And so most of the time we don't really go deep into identity because we assume, oh, I know who I am. I know who I am. I know what's going on. And friend, you don't know nothing. And the reason being is that, or you may know something, but typically we only know the tip of the iceberg. And how do I know that? I know that because most people like me have no idea who God is. We only know who God is hypothetically. So think about it. If you don't know your creator, except for hypothetically, like you have an idea of how it goes, or like, oh, okay, it's this person that did this, that, and whatever. But you're created in his image. So if you don't know who God is, except for hypothetically, or you didn't walk in a church somewhere, or you didn't, got on a prayer mat a few times, but you never really like get to know like who is God, and you're created in his image. You're created to be just like him. What's up, Neo Musica? You just added me, but you ain't saying anything. Y'all allowed to chat and comment, and y'all please like the live. Just tap your screen until you can't tap anymore. Let's get the likes up to the few thousand so that way people can see it. But if you don't know who you are, or you don't know who God is, you're not even going to come close to touching who you are. You're not. You're going to come very close, right? But it's not going to be that. And you're going to be basing who you are based on past experiences, based on who people told you are, and the personality you've developed out of necessity. Like, when's the last time we've completely deconstructed all of our definitions of ourselves? All of them. Some of us, and I know this is for sure, I remember being a kid, I was always the weirdo, right? And I remember some of my cousins would be like, you ain't even black. You a white woman. You act just like a white woman. Da, 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 da. So I'm thinking, well, I know I'm black. So maybe I'm not acting the way a black person is supposed to act. Okay, how do I let me study this. How are black people supposed to act? So instead of just being myself and being how God created me, I'm sitting here trying to figure out, okay, well, clearly how I'm acting is wrong based upon my skin color. How do I become more black? Any of y'all ever have that happen? Man, you acting just like a white person. You acting just like this, right? And it was a kid, and I was like, this is stupid. But these are the things that are socially ingrained into us that subconsciously over time begin to define who we are. And we start to define ourselves based on these boxes, right? Instead of defining ourselves based on how God defines us, how he created us to be. And when you deconstruct all of that and you just get down to, Sarah, the spirit, what is Sarah's spirit like? What is Patrick's spirit like? What is Neo Musica's spirit like? You never really get to know who you are. You have no idea. What is your spirit testifying? What are your natural inclinations? Right? Donnie, thank you so much for liking the live. And y'all, please continue to like the live. Keep doing it. What's up, Sharonda? What's up? What's up? What's up? But until you get in there and you say, hey, Sharonda, what does Sharonda's spirit say that she's like? And the next level is sometimes we start to compare ourselves to what we've been through. And you think you are what you've been through. But those are occurrences. Those are occurrences. Now they can be able to mold you. Sometimes they make you stronger, but you are not what you've been through. right? Because some of the things that you've been through were still outside of the will of God. So that's still not who you are, right? Some of those things was outside of the will of God. Meaning it wasn't, there were not things that you were supposed to have gone through, but through mercy and grace, you made it through, right? And God brought you through it, but it was never his intention for you to go through that. So that's why um it's still very, very dangerous to define yourself based upon what you've been through. Don't do it. Don't do it. So you have to figure out how to peel back the layers of your identity. And the reason this is important is how your identity is basically this. And I just wanted to break this down, right? Because people throw this word around, but your identity is basically how you define who you are and the way that you define who you are. And it's the fact of being who or what a person or a thing is. Now, this is how identity impacts everything. Because once you determine your identity, the second thing that comes from that is it determines a function. Identity determines a function. For instance, the thing I'm sitting in, right? It is identified as a chair. So guess what we do with that? We sit in it. I don't cook food on it. You don't cook food on it. You know, you don't use it as something that you uh, rub your toes on, especially not my household, my grandma household, you be in trouble, right? You don't use it for washing a dog. You don't do whatever, right? Once you identify this as a chair, there is a function that's associated with that chair. And so most of us, without realizing it, our identity has become perverted. And the word perversion, people always think about it as being like nasty, but really something that is perverted, meaning it goes against the original intention of function in which it's supposed to be. That's it. You know, for instance, you can pervert marriage. If you're marrying for control or you're marrying for money, you're doing like that. So that's not the original intention God had for marriage. You know, you can have y'all any of y'all ever seen people pervert their title or a position that they're in? And instead of using their position to serve, right? They use that position for to feed their ego or for control or something else like that. That's an example of it. And so you have to get really, 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 really detailed and really take time to think about how is it that you've been defining yourself? How have you been defining yourself? What has that been based on? What has that been based on? Who defined you? Right? And based on those definitions, what how did you determine how you should function in the world based upon the definitions that people have given you? So I want y'all to think about that for a second. And I want you to think about some of the different ways you've defined yourself. And when was the last time you've questioned it? When was the last time you said, who, what, when, where did this definition come from? And while y'all thinking about this, y'all please like the live. So that way, I know some of y'all may be at work or whatever, but just tap your screen up until you can't tap anymore, my friend. Now, y'all, I love this. I got this in South Africa or from South Africa. One of my favorite pieces of jewelry or accessories. And so I'm happy when I put it on today because if I gain any weight, then I can't snap all of them closed. It'll just be like 1, 2, 3. And I remember at one point I had gained some significant amount of weight and I can only get it snapped to like right here. And so I put it on today and I said, oh, hold up now. I can get this thing up all the way to this side. Good job. It makes me feel like Wakanda forever. Or it makes me feel like a superhero, but it really matches my shirt. So yes, y'all go ahead and like the live. I see y'all are in here. All you have to do is tap the screen. Just go like that. Boom, 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 boom. So, and the reason that's important is if you don't like the live, TikTok is not going to show this live to anyone. And I want to get it to like the thousands. Thank y'all so much for liking it. I really appreciate that. And so as I'm speaking, y'all continue to do that and we'll go through it. But I want you to think about the different ways that you've identified yourself and how did that subconsciously change the way you've defined how you're supposed to function in this world? Meaning, what is it that you're supposed to do? What boxes have you put yourself in? And think about all the different social structures that we have in place that start to define people based upon things that are just inaccurate or based upon ungodly standards. I was thinking about this the other day. There's some geniuses that were put in special education and remedial tracks and things like that in school because people were like, look, you're not learning what it is that we told you to learn when really God gave them an idea and they can't get their mind off of that. Like they're just a genius mechanic. And instead of learning, how to do art and putting a lot of their emphasis on one thing or the other, they're spending all of their time trying to figure out how things work. Have any of y'all met people like that? Or you remember kids that were like that? That somehow the school put them, in different special education courses. And, people thought that they were stupid, that they were really a genius mechanic or they were a genius in something very specific. Now imagine, and this is the sad part, is that really created an identity crisis for many people just because God gave them an overload in one specific area for them to fulfill their destiny in one specific area. But society came through and said, he's special, he's stupid. She's stupid. And what it did was it killed their confidence in one specific area and made it to where, they're not able to do what they're supposed to do. Or sometimes people just get like super religious about something. Like if you, tell a woman, hey, your identity as a wife and your only value comes as being a wife. And maybe that person was really meant to be, strong in politics, or they were meant to be an attorney or whatever. And maybe God had really destined them to get married at 35. But instead of focusing on, hey, you're supposed to go to law school, you're supposed to do all this, and I predestined that you're going to meet your spouse or whatever at 35, right? It's an amazing day when you can't gather all those words. I don't know what that means, Lisa. You're gonna have to look. I was on the special bus, so I don't know what you mean, but maybe this person was supposed to be an attorney. Maybe this person was supposed to have been, a politician and to meet their spouse at 35, but because someone changed their identity from attorney to just look, your only value is a wife, this person runs out and gets married at 25, right? Of course, things don't work out because things don't ever really work out when they're outside of the will of God for that person's life, and they're really outside of the identity that they have, their true identity. It never works out. That's the hardest part. Anything that I've done that's really been outside of the purpose of my life and God's will for my life, it never worked out. And was never able, I was never able to sustain it. And if I did, I was just miserable while it was happening. So now you have someone that maybe was supposed to be a wife, but maybe it was destined to happen at 35, but because society says, oh, you're an old maid at that time or whatever, now this person has sworn off marriage completely because they messed around and was pressured, at 25, things didn't work out. Now they're like, so then they end up completely missing their identity because of some sort of social standard. So this is why all of these different things are so, so important. So when we get into identity, it's really just how you define who you are. Now, most people define their identity based on their past experiences, right? And this is how any of y'all ever had people that be like, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know where I've been. And you're like, we're not even talking about that, sir. It can be done to give yourself a break. That is not another. I don't know, Lisa. I'm not getting it, but maybe I think TikTok is a little bit like slower with allowing me to see the comments. So yeah. But have y'all ever seen people that are like, you don't know where I've been to, well, you don't know what I came from. You don't know what I've been through. And I'm like, well, I can see there's a lot of unhealed trauma, but thank you so much, Anthony. Unhealed trauma. But that's a perfect example of how people will identify themselves based upon what they've been through. Now, the hard part about that, what's up, Audrey? The hard part about that is when your identity is based on what you've been through, that means that your function is always in the past because you're consistently identifying yourself with what has happened. So everything in your soul, your mind, your will, and emotions are focused on the past. Do you know how hard it is to make something come into fruition today when your mind stays in the past? And then you wonder why it feels like every time you go to do something, you're a day late and a dollar short because your soul's in the past. What's the point of making anything happen today when all of your thoughts, all of your energy, everything that you think about is based upon something that's already happened? But you need new ideas for today that's going to build your tomorrow. You can't do that if your mind is constantly stuck on where you have been. And without realizing it, you started to define yourself based upon where you have been instead of where God is trying to take you. Then you're stuck in a time. Think about how hard it is to innovate and create and come up with new ideas when you're stuck in a time. When your mindset is always on the past, right? So you have to do that. So that's how you define yourself. So some people define themselves by their past experiences. Some people define themselves based upon what someone else told them, other people's opinions. When it comes to defining yourself, the only person's opinion who matters is God. Point blank and the period. That's the only person's opinion who matters. So what happens when you define yourself based on other people's opinions? Well, the first thing is all of their opinions are formed based on who they are and their interpretations of how things should be. It's just their opinion, not a fact, their opinion. And it's based upon how it is that they see the world. So I'll give you a perfect example. I was thinking about this. Have y'all ever seen what's the model's name? What's the name of the model, y'all? From like the 80s and 90s. She was in all of those movies. She was from Jamaica. I think her name was Jones, something like that. What was her name, y'all? And she always had her hair cut really short. She was really, really dark, beautiful. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, she was one of the highest paid models of that time. I can only imagine the number of people as a kid because she looked so unique and so different. I can only imagine the number of people who called her ugly as a child. Imagine if she had allowed that to be her identity. Her last name was Jones. Grace Jones. Grace Jones, beautiful woman. But she didn't have typical features. Didn't have typical features. But that same thing that would have made other people say, what is that? Not you bald headed. I'm bald headed too. Right? Yes, Good Day. She played in Grace Jones. Right. Grace Jones was a multi-millionaire model. not on Instagram, not nothing. She was like on yachts and things of that nature, movies, everything, to where anyone who sees a picture of her, and the crazy part is she looks almost exactly the same today as she did in the 80s and 90s, right? But imagine if she would have allowed herself to be identified based on other people's opinions. That's why you only allow God to place any sort of opinion on you. Period. Right? So you have to get into that. So don't define yourself and identify yourself by your past experiences or other people's opinions of you. Third thing, sometimes we identify ourselves based upon our responses when we were in an unhealed state. Meaning, you think you're an introvert when really you went through some trauma that made you retreat from life and no one's talked about it. And there's certain parts of my personality that I thought was just me, or ways that I define myself that I thought was just me. And I realized, no, it's not just you. You went through some trauma, you went through some experiences that made you alter your behavior, right? That made you alter your behavior. And you haven't changed that behavior since you were 5, 6, 7, and 8 years old. So you're starting to identify yourself based upon the personality that you built while you were in an unhealed state. And so you add other people's opinions, past experiences, and then the way that we've changed based upon traumatic experiences. And then we start to define ourselves based on that. And it's not until you really get to the core of how God made you and just kind of peel back all the things and all the seeds and the weeds that were planted there that were never supposed to be there in the first place, till you get to the real you. Now, this why am I talking about this? I realize, especially this is something that I've seen consistently while coaching people, consistently in ministry, consistently when whatever. And I know one of the things that I'm called to do is to push people closer towards their destiny. And it's funny when I see people and I see the things that they want to do, it's almost like God shows me, like, this is what I really want for them. This is what I really put inside of them. And then I hear something come out of their mouths that are completely against what I'm saying. And I'm like, friend, I can see your life. It's going to be great. But when I hear them speak, it's almost like they're speaking as though they're a squire, when really they're a king, a queen, in whatever perspective fields that they're in. I can see everything that they're capable of, what they can do, their future, or whatever. But when I hear them speak, they're speaking as though they're just like, I don't know, an ant. When really what I'm seeing is a giant. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, okay, either God's lying or you're lying to yourself, or you've been listening to the enemy. Because I know God ain't lying. And I know I'm seeing what it is that I'm seeing. And I've been on the other side of that, to where people would say, man, you're just so incredible, this and this and that. You have so much influence. You have this. You really changed people. You do this. And I was like, who are you talking about? This actually happened the other night. Um, I was speaking to someone about just some spiritual things. And he's like, yo, I could feel just the presence, God's spirit just coming off of you. I was like, okay. Because I still sometimes have a hard time receiving anything that's like that. Right. But I like it. It keeps me humble. But on the other end, it's one thing to just be humble, and another thing to be in a complete state of an identity crisis. And let me tell you, the number one way that your the enemy, and everyone else holds you back is making you see yourself smaller than what you are. Now, the goal is not to be a narcissist where you see yourself way bigger and you have delusions of grandeur, but you need to see yourself however it is that God sees you. Period. You need to see yourself based upon what he put in you. Meaning, how weird would it be, to see a bear who walks around thinking that he's a cat, and he's crawling around and running away from whatever, right? And just doing different things. That would seem crazy. Or imagine seeing a lion that was, you know, walking around like a tabby cat. It would be strange. You'd be like, you don't know you're a lion out here in this life? And so when you're a lion walking around like you're a tabby cat, you don't go after big game. You don't try to chase down the antelope. You a whole lion going after mice. Ain't that nasty? Ain't that sad? Imagine that. Imagine if you saw a lion that saw a whole antelope out there and be like, I ain't that big. I can't do that. And you, next thing you know, the lion is going after mice and wondering why he's always hungry. Because you weren't built, you too big to feed off of mice. And wonder why. Thank you for liking the live, Sturt. And wonder why you're consistently hungry and aggravated because you ain't had a full meal in years. And so this is why we have to really take the time to question how it is that we identify ourselves, because I meet lions every day who see themselves as tabby cats. Now, this is the funny part, because you meet a tabby cat that thinks he's a lion. And if any of y'all ever met, you know, y'all have cats, you see, like, okay, clearly you came from a lion. Maybe y'all did something wrong and you ended up, the Lord was like, we got to take this down a little bit, right? So you have to do that. And so the reality is every single one of us is 100% unique, 100% unique. And you're not an ant. God already made an ant. You're not a rat. God already made that. Whatever insignificant being is out there, it's already there. And the reality is, he said, you're made in his image, and he ain't weak. He don't run out of ideas. He's not stupid. He's not ugly. He's not weak. He's not any of those things. And so anytime you have those ideas about yourself, you're completely out of alignment with your true identity. Now, remember, we said identity, once you define yourself, there's a function that goes along with it. So cats know what their function is. One, to get on our nerves. Two, to run into our house and domesticate themselves, because we wouldn't just invite them in. They're smart, right? And they know, look, we're supposed to be keeping these mice down. We're supposed to be keeping these snakes down. We're supposed to be keeping all these rodents down. And they will run around all night doing that, hunting, doing their job. They understand their function. But if you're in an identity crisis, you won't understand your function and wonder why you're so unhappy. So most of the time, though, it's not that we're completely off. Most of the time is that we have like a mixed bag of our identity. Some parts of it is right, and some parts of it are just way off. I mean, way, 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 way off. But this is what I love, is that we're always getting, yes, glory to God, Nathan, Dobie. And y'all, please continue to like the live. Let's get the lives up to like 2,000 at least. So, because this is important information that people need to see, and TikTok will only show it to people if you guys are liking it. So there's a lot of likes, then a lot of people are going to see it. If there aren't, then the algorithm's just not going to show it to people. And they determine what they show to people based upon what's liking. That's how we come across videos, and there's so many people in there. And then they'll show you something that has one like just to try it out. Like, hey, is this okay? So anyway, thank you so much for liking it. Thank you so much for following it. So you have to really question how it is that you're defining yourselves. Who told you what you were? Are you basing it on your past failures, meaning what you've done? Because you can't identify yourself based upon what you've done. Because otherwise, some of y'all would be like, well, I was a toddler at one time. I couldn't walk. But at a certain point, once you had outgrown that and you failed at walking, you started to walk. And, we live in a society, and people don't want to fail, but we fail and learn. We fail and learn. That's why I know for sure that's why God told us, my mercies renew daily. Because we're going to need new mercy every day based on our past failures. But the key is to learn from the mistakes. You didn't just keep crawling because you fell down walking a few times. So you can't base it upon your past mistakes. And so the goal is think about how you define yourself and think, okay, I love these things, but these are the areas where I'm showing a little bit of weakness. And then what you have to do is identify the things that got caught up in that bag that you have. Imagine your identity just being this bag. And one here you're like, okay, Louis, Chanel, this, and then you're over here, you like penny store. All the things that come that's cheaply made, or you're just like, something about this ain't right. It's low quality. And by low quality means that you don't see yourself as being high quality in that area. You see yourself as being less than enough in that area. You got to pull all of those things out and question it. Just like the police would at a party that went awry. Everybody got to come out. Let's question these things. Let's see what the real culprit of this decision it was. Thank you so much, sir. So you got to really dig deep and figure out, hey, what doesn't belong here? Why doesn't this make sense? And really say, okay, who told you that? When did this start? And sometimes you need someone else to help you do that. That's what I do as a coach. Is I say, hold on. This thing don't make sense because you see yourself as a victor. I see the lion come out in all these areas, and when we get here, you turn into the tabby cat, and like a little small one at that. Or you turn to a smelly cat in this area. I don't know why that came into my mind. I'm thinking lion and then a small little kitten. And I'm just like, okay, where did the lion go? In these specific areas, the lion disappeared. And it comes down to identity. And this is why this is important. I can guarantee you every area of your life that you're disappointed with, what you can find is a part of yourself where your identity has been perverted. Your identity has been lowered from the standard of God. It's been misused. It's been redefined. Something about it has gone wrong. And so the first thing is, and this is one area that will affect your life based on your identity. Your identity affects your interactions. This is really so good and so true. Thank you so much. And y'all share it with some people. I probably need to share it with some folks too. Right? Your identity will impact you already in here, I think. I'm just gonna do this. Your identity will impact your interactions. Some of our destiny or our destinies are connected to people. So you're looking for a way out, and you're like, Lord, I need a way. I need to level up or whatever. And it'll bring certain people into your life because there's something that person has that you need. Sometimes, and it can be this. I have someone in one of my small groups, and I was like, you talking about you got to save your money. I was like, and I immediately I knew. I said, the money you need for this project, someone already has. You just haven't asked them yet. Do you know this person said, God put in my spirit to ask so and so and so and so and so and so. I said, have you done it? No. So it impacts your interactions to where at times you think, oh, I'm in this dry place, but there's already been a seed planted in a person to help take you from where you are to where you need to be, whether they download information to you, whether it's their influence, whether finding favor through people, whether it's their influence, maybe it's a financial seed that they have, maybe it's an idea, maybe you got one half of the company and this person has the other half. And maybe they have the money, but they need the manager. And then you got the managing skills, but you don't have the money. All of these things, right? But when your identity has been perverted and how you see yourself, right? I'm at work tapping or taping. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for coming in, right? So whether you think that however you see yourself, that's how you're going to interact with that person. So, you don't see yourself as a lion. So instead of speaking boldly about what you bring to the table, you start, but you're lying. And this person's like, look, I got the money. I have this idea. I need somebody to run this thing, run this company. And you're like, I think I can do it. Friend, you just fumbled the bag. God put you in position, but your identity got in the way. Or have you seen it to where maybe this person, your connections counts just don't distract and keep striving for better. Exactly. Right. Or maybe, sometimes I see people, and I've seen this happen before to where I had someone who lived an alternative lifestyle. And, at that point, I was like, look, I'm here to coach you to the next level. Let's do this. And this person just thought, hey, everyone who sees me, they only see this. They start treating me wrong. They start doing this. I said, look, that may be true, but part of it is you're explaining to me a few experiences that you've had, and you're basing all of your interactions on that. So every place you go, you come in as though you're identifying with rejection. So now your identity is he or she who is always rejected. So instead of going into these interactions and you're getting like, and this is the thing, God will put us in the room with the exact people we need to be around to take us to the next level. And so he's always going to do his part, but you got to do your part when you get in there. You got to do it. Why? Why? Because you still have free will. You still got to want it. You still got to show up. And if you're showing up, thank you so much. God is good. Glory to God. So if you show up, God did his part, but you're showing up as she who is rejected. And he already told us this is a rule, y'all. And this is the thing. Biblical truths are rules. And God is the same today, tomorrow, yesterday, whatever. He said, as a man thinketh, so is he. That's a rule. There's no way you can get around it. That is a spiritual truth. And spiritual truths are more real than any natural truth. So if in your mind you are he or she who is always rejected, he already made that as a rule. It's already in the book of instructions. So if you go into any space as he or she who is rejected, guess what's going to happen? And the thing is that he already gave you the rule. You just got to apply it. You better apply it even if you think it's delusional. We see small cats do it all the time. Y'all ever seen a small cat fight a big old dog? Because in his mind, he's still the lion. But sometimes my dog runs after little cats. He act like he gonna fight him. I say, all right, go ahead and get beat up today in the middle of these streets. Let everybody in the neighborhood on their ring camera see a big old 120, 30-pound Rottweiler get beat up by this black cat over here. So they could all be laughing. You be all over Instagram from the ring camera. Why? Because as a man thinking in his mind, so is he. This is why it's dangerous for your identity and how you define yourself to be a mixed bag. It's dangerous because now you're defining yourself by something that's lower than the standard. It's flawed, right? And any definition that is lower than the standard of God is demonic. So you may not, you don't even realize that some of the ways you see yourself is satanic because you're defining yourself by the way the enemy sees you. They ain't nothing. I don't like them. When you hate yourself, all of those things, you're agreeing with Satan because he hates us. So you're still out of alignment. It is dangerous to be like that. So that's the first thing is it impacts your interactions. 3, this is actually number 2. I'm put this wrong. It impacts your career choices. It impacts what you choose to go into. Now, we spend the majority of our time in many instances working. And so it does contribute towards our happiness, especially if we don't have the right alignment, right? And every person has some work to do, right? If you read in Genesis 1, God put Adam in the garden, right? To cultivate it or tend to it and to keep it. The word there means to work and to serve and to guard it. So you're going to be doing some work in somewhere, somehow, whatever. You're going to be serving something. But where you choose to do so needs to be consistent with your identity. Otherwise, you ever see, and I remember there was this guy who came because somehow my windshield cracked. Oh, I rented my car out on Turo, and the guy got in some sort of something behind some car, something came out and it cracked the window. He was tripping, all this other stuff, right? And I was like, look, there's insurance, whatever, like no big deal. I know you didn't do that on purpose. No one rents a car with the mindset of like, I'm going to wreck this or I'm going to mess this car up and have to pay a lot of money. I was like, you didn't do it on purpose. It's covered. Let's do our thing. So the guy who came to change the windshield, all he did was cursing. He's like, he just looked upset that he was there. And he's like, just upset. And he's like, man. And so he brought the windshield, but apparently the company sent the wrong windshield. And so in a Mercedes, the windshield that I had some sort of something on there. It was supposed to be an attachment. And it's not just the windshield, it's some other stuff that goes on there. And so he started cursing and doing all this stuff. And he's like, I can't wait. I've hated this job for 20 years. I'm only 5 years from retirement. Blah, 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 blah. Woo, woo, woo. And I was just like, and I looked at the guy, and I'm not saying this from just like a cosmetic standpoint, but his face looked so aged. Everything about him just looked 100 years old. All this other stuff, his countenance, everything. And I realized, I was like, oh, okay, you've hated this forever. But something about how you've defined yourself has told you that you can't do any better. So now, and and I believe he was talking about his health problems and this and that and that. Anytime you're doing something that you hate, it's going to show in your spirit. It's going to show in your flesh. I'm sorry, it's going to show in your soul. It's going to show in your flesh. It's going to show all over your skin. It's going to be your emotions are going to show that you hate this. Your motivation, which is your will and what you're driven to, is going to show that you hate this. How you feel, everything is going to show that. But somewhere in your identity, you said, I can't do any better than this. And now it's dangerous. But remember that we are created in the image of God, meaning we have unlimited amounts of potential and potentiality. It don't take but once. I have a client that was like, I'm challenging myself to make $1 million in a month. Boom. And let me tell you, there's been things I have challenged myself to do that I've hit. And I was like, so if I could do that in this amount of time, why am I going to the slow and steady route? That makes no sense. Who told me I had to do that? No. We've been brainwashed into thinking that we should just accept the slow and steady route. But the person who made the company, they didn't accept the slow and steady route. They just need to get everybody else in alignment with that. So it impacts your career choices. Another way your identity really, this is a big one, how it affects your life is that it impacts how you choose your partners. How you choose your partners. If your identity has been perverted and your identity is lower than the standard of God has for you, you are going to choose a partner from that lowered state. Now, this is dangerous because if you ever mess around and you take hold of God's identity for your life, that partner going to be real mad because they're going to be like, I didn't sign up for this. And you're going to be looking at this person like, what did I do? I done messed around and had 5 kids with them, this and this and that, and somehow you woke up. But whoever you choose to partner with and build with is going to be based on your identity. And if it's lowered, you're going to choose lower state for that. It's going to be outside the will of God for your life. That doesn't mean that every person is bad, but when you know who you are and how you're built, you know what kind of partner you can sustain. And when people think of this, they think of it all about money. But I'll tell you this. I know I hear some women are like, I gotta have a high value man. I got this. And I'm like, whose values? The world's values or God's values? That's number one. How do you define high value? Does he have high values? Or does he have low values with high amounts of money, but very, very low values? Honey, and while I'm on this, right? Every single one of us has a choice of how we're going to determine what's valuable. One of the things that I'm actually teaching this, y'all, if you're a lady on here, tonight is the first night, because I was like, I realized so many people don't understand this. Tonight is the first night of Bad Girls Gone Good for God Bible study. So I'm going to cover some of this tonight. But one of the things while I was studying the other day, one of the things that we forget in the Bible is that when God placed Adam and Eve in the garden, he said there were 2 trees there. There was the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That means the only one they weren't allowed to eat from was the knowledge of good and evil. But they 1000% had the opportunity to eat from the tree of life, but were deceived and or chose to eat from the knowledge of good and evil. So in everything that you do, you get an opportunity to eat from either the tree of life or that other one. And so just because everyone else says that other one was good, we found out it wasn't. It's the same thing when you choose your partner. Yeah, a lot of people are going to look good. A lot of people are going to smell good, whatever. But you got to ask yourself, is this the tree of life or the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Because if I just look at it on eye level, it looks about the same. It's not until you get deeper that you're like, oh, this one's going to lead me to a life full of righteousness. This one's going to lead me to a life where I'm going to be going through pretty hell, because there's a lot of pretty hell out here. Heck, I've been pretty hell before. So you have that opportunity, but when you choose your partners based on a lower state, now this is the thing that just came to me. Eve already had access to as much knowledge as she wanted, especially of righteousness. One, she was in a space to where you got to dwell with God every day. They got access to his garden, right? You had access to the tree of life. You had access to all of those things. But maybe you thought in your mind, oh, I don't have everything that I need. Maybe I'm not wise enough. And then you make another mistake. That's an idea and a demonstration of when your identity is off. You start dwelling with the wrong people. My second question was, why would you be talking to a snake when you have the ability to talk to God and your husband? Why are you talking to a snake? It makes no sense. So it really, really depends on how you choose your partners. So I would say before you choose any partner, thank you for following. I am Adriana, and y'all, thank you. Continue to like. Please share the live with like 5 people. It really determines how you choose your partners. And many of us are living in a state to where we're living out certain curses in life because we chose the wrong partners. And then we choose the wrong partners and then we blame them for being wrong. If you want to join the live, you can if you want to ask a question, just put something in here, an emoji and request to join the live, just so I can see that it's someone that's actually in here and not just some random person, because sometimes it's just So anyway, choose the right person, because all of us have a choice in who we choose, ideally, right? And make sure you're doing it from an elevated state. Never go into a relationship when you're at a low because only low is going to resonate with you. And let me tell you this, because this is a really tough pill to swallow. Eagles don't feed off of what's dead. Eagles hunt. They want to eat something where that blood is warm. Okay? An eagle come down and snatch up your chihuahua from 1,000 feet in the air. It's going to come and snatch up your whatever can fit in its claws. It wants something that's alive. A duck or something that's alive. It don't feed off of what's dead. A vulture, on the other end, has a taste for what's already dead. For what's already dead. It don't want it if it got a heartbeat. It don't stink enough. It don't stink enough for them. You know, you got to have that ugly look on your face like, I just died. Ah! Okay. That's whenever you laughing, I am Adrian. It's true. It don't want what's alive. And so whenever your identity is at a lower state, know that you're not going to attract an eagle because an eagle is not attracted to what's dead. The only thing you're going to attract in that time period is a vulture. Why? Because vultures only feed off of what's already dead. So your best bet is when you feel that you're in an emotional low. Life ain't really what you think it is. In a sense to where it's like, maybe if I play the damsel in distress, and it's not even really a play because someone can be manipulative and just play that, but still be very, very alive and just like, come get me, eagle. I'm easy game. I'm not moving that much. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you are actually in a lowered state. And there's parts of you that need to come back alive. There's parts of your identity that you need to bring about. That is not the time to pick a partner. That is the time for you to go in your prayer closet, to go to therapy, to resurrect that which has been dead and to bring it back to life. Once you do that, now you're attracting something that is attracted to a different type of game. You have the confidence now to attract an eagle. You're moving around enough. You're warm enough. You're hot-blooded enough to attract an eagle. And the best part about it is when you're confident, your identity's on point, you know who you are, you know what you stand for, you know all of that stuff. A vulture's like, ugh, nasty. It don't even stink. Ugh. That's what you want. Sometimes when I look at some of these podcasts and people are like, oh, these people so independent, they're doing this, da da da. What you don't realize, friend, is don't tell that person that they're wrong. A vulture likes what they like. And they don't like what's alive. They don't want to have to chase. An eagle loves the chase. Y'all ever see those videos? I love watching National Geographic. That eagle come down and scoop up a little lion cub, a little whatever, mountain lion cub or whatever. That thing starts like, like it's just happy. It's happy with the chase. It's happy with the hunt. It's happy with what they're able to do. And that thing, and let me tell you, those eagles come down, grab it, and they pull that thing way up. Okay. Thank you so much, Jim. So, hello, greetings. Happy hump day to you. Yes, hello. Hello. Thank you for following, Dwayne. Thank you for the gifts. God bless you. Okay. So, this is why you don't choose a partner when you're in a lower state. Get into your identity and really ask God, this is how I see myself, but how do you see me in this area? Pray about it. Wait, pick up some books, and you're going to see all these things are going to come. You're like, you know what? You're right. I am a lion. I'm a lion. You don't want to have a lion and you don't want to be a lion and you done messed around and picked for friendships and relationships, something off. You hyenas. You can run in the whole wrong pack. And next thing you know, the hyenas then jumped on you at night. The moment you figured out you was the lion, you're like, hold up, I'm because they scared you go jump on them. Okay. You said this information is so good, applies to so many areas of life. Thank you so much. Okay. The next area in which your identity impacts is how you respond to conflict and or challenges. Remember, some of y'all are eagles trying to beat chickens and vultures and everything else, or lions trying to be tabby cats. Now, let me ask you this. You buck up on a lion, what's the lion gonna do? Oh, oh, I ain't been in a good fight in a while. I've been sitting here with this pride, chilling, just looking over at my girls hunting. But I guess you bout it. You bout it today. I get to having a good fight because I can't fight with the people in my pack. I done already won all the fights. But since you out here, we're gonna do WWE 40. Oh, we're gonna have WWE 40. We're gonna have the Rock and the Undertaker, everybody come out, okay? It's WrestleMania. That's what it is. WrestleMania 40. You do that same thing with a little scared feral cat or a vulture or a chicken or something like that. It might fight or it might run. It's not, you just never know. And how it responds and how you respond to conflict and respond to challenges is going to be that. Not WWE. Y'all know WrestleMania 40. I'm just saying that's a place where people fight, right? People look forward to WrestleMania 40. Okay, I think that's probably was more viewed than this Mike Tyson fight, right? So, how you respond to conflict and challenges. When your identity is in place, you're able to step up to the challenge in a healthy way. You're not overcompensating. You're not running. You're not doing all these things. You're like, okay, life is giving me a challenge. I need to fight. All right, let me gear up real quick. Lions start like, okay, cool. You gonna try this? All right, cool. But when your identity's off, it's like everyone's trying to kill me. Right? And it's just like, no, this is a challenge of life. You have to face it. It's like, or maybe another lion in the pack is like, look, I might end up being the head if I can beat this guy. He might whoop me, but I ain't gonna die. I might just have to sit down, but I'm gonna at least try. To be the king of the jungle. I'm gonna at least try. When your identity's off, you won't even try. You won't even try because you'll always think, no, I'm too low for that. Last time this happened, I failed last time. I lost that last fight. And you start doing those things. Or maybe someone, you have conflict with someone. I can always tell when someone is dealing with insecurity or they're having some identity issues because the moment there's any sort of conflict, they either shut down, run away, do something, right? That happened to me in business. It happens. It happens to all of us. But, today you're having the opportunity to look at that and be like, okay, what part of my identity got off that made me afraid to fight? Or that made me run away from this? Because typically it's not just in business, it's in other areas. We just didn't take the time to look and say, man, why do I always run from that? Where did my identity get off from that? Why do I see conflict as like almost like as life or death? And not all conflict is life or death. Sometimes conflict is just conflict. I think that's why forgiveness is so important because as human beings, we're always going to be in conflict with each other in some form or fashion, especially when you deal with people with different opinions, different perspectives, different ideas. That's why it's so important to learn how to collaborate, how to communicate, how to bring in third parties, how to do all these things, just because it's a sign of maturity when you know how to move around conflict. And whenever I was faced with conflict and I would run, I was like, okay, there's some way, somehow, the little girl in me, or for some of y'all, the little boy in me is still present in these types of environments. Why? the little girl Yannick is showing up. Where did this not get healed? Because this part of me hasn't matured up to this big age. Where did this part of my identity get to where I'm still a little kitty cat there instead of the lion? What happened? How did this little thing get into my bag? And your identity also, in a similar sense, and how you see yourself and how you define yourself will determine whether or not you'll take risk. Some of y'all really don't believe that you are the lender, not the borrower. You're above and not beneath, the head and not the tail, all of those different things. And so when it comes to taking risk and doing what you need to do to navigate your life to the next level, because guess what? You know, like I said, God always does his part, but we still gotta do our part. Like we still gotta walk through the wilderness. We can't just stand at the edge and be like, beam me up, Scotty. Sometimes you just gotta walk out. You know, there was a time I'll tell you this. This was maybe a week or two. And I was like, Lord, should I do this? Da, 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 da. And the only thing I could hear was pick up your mat and walk. Why do you keep asking me? And that's basically God's way of saying, why do you keep asking me for permission of something I've already ordained you to do? I've already given you directions to do. And so here I am asking, like, is this okay if I do this? And he's like, just pick up your mat and walk, do it. And then I had to ask myself, why didn't I do it? Right. And sometimes we're looking for that beam me up, Scotty. Beam me up. But it's like, no, you gotta walk out. You gotta be willing to walk that thing through. And and asking yourself, where did this fear creep into my identity? What are you truly afraid of? And there's very, very few things that you can get yourself into that you can't get yourself out of. So you want to make sure that you do that. So whether or not you take risk, there's no risk, no reward. And really someone who's afraid to take risk, what you're really showing is that you're afraid of losing. Or maybe you feel as though you've taken a lot of losses. You're like, look, I can't take any more losses. Go to therapy. You got to do something to set yourself up with some sort of reset. You got to reset. You got to reset your soul, your mind, your will, and emotions until you do something to heal and set that reset button. Then, yeah, it does feel like you've been through, like, I can't take not one more loss. All that means is that you're still carrying all the losses from the past. So you got to do whatever you got to do to drop that and be like, okay, that was the past, but today's a new day. This is one thing that I was thinking about now, y'all. I'm gonna still pray about this, but I was reading through Genesis and I was like, okay, I know that the sun and the moon did not come until later, right? But the Bible says this is what God did on the first day, the second day. And I was like, well, so what makes a new day? And I was like, oh, a day is just when God is doing something new. I did this yesterday. Well, we're doing something new today. I did something. I separated the waters from the heavens, from the waters on the ground. That's what I did today. Tomorrow, we doing something new. We making some land. That's it. So at a certain point, you got to decide today's a new day because every day you wake up, God's doing something new. But the first key is allowing him to do something new inside of you. And then you doing something new with that. And so when you feel like, oh, I just can't do anything else, you're not allowing for something new to happen. You won't accept that it's a new day. You're still looking backwards. So, and it also, your identity impacts your confidence and your abilities. So when your identity is off, let me tell you, everything that you create, you're going to doubt. Because when you create something, a business, an idea, music, art, writing, books, websites, policies, strategies, techniques, new techniques, whatever, whatever, whatever. You can have a Nobel winning creation, but you won't recognize it because that creation came from you. And so if your identity's off, you're going to devalue all the things that come from you. You might even devalue your children because if you don't think you're great, then maybe you're like, well, why is my child? You all ever see that where people are like, well, why is my child so different from everyone else? How come all everyone else's kids make 1,000 different friends? My child only has one friend. Why is this? Why is that? Da 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 da. And they think what they're doing is doubting the child, but really your identity's off. And when your identity's off, you question everything that you create. Everything, including your kids. Because you'll always think that that thing is a little bit lower than what it's supposed to be, but you're created in the image of God. So how could that be lower? It's just different. And so some of y'all are sitting on ideas and you think that you're afraid or it's timing and this and this and that, but really you don't take a lot of value in which you've created because you don't have a high value in yourself. And so this is why whenever I work with people, the first thing that I do is really dig deep into how they see themselves. And that's also normally the source of most of the problems that I see in their strategy and their conversations, how they lead, whether or not their business is like 50 years behind, all of these things. I always come up with an identity issue. And I'm like, who told you that? Where did this come from? And then I'll go back and it was a teacher from when they were in third grade, or maybe they had really, really, really critical parents. And that's the thing where you got to be that spirit of criticism. You got to be really, really careful with, because you have constructive criticism and everyone should be able to accept criticism. But then there's that spirit of criticism where all you do is criticize your children on every little thing. And it's because you were judged and someone hurt your feelings and you're afraid that your children are be judged in the same way. So instead of letting somebody else judge them, you judge them, not realizing that you have way, 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 way more influence than any person that they can meet in the streets. Amen. No, if that ain't hit y'all, it hit me. Thank you, Holy Spirit. So, sometimes I'll be like, I'm gonna get to you first. That's not good, friend. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. So, yes. Okay. So you got to make sure that you're not doing that to yourself and to your kids as well. Um, your identity will also impact what you believe is possible for you. It'll impact what you believe is your potential. Not to say I'm gonna tell any of y'all to go out gambling, right? But there's people who go in the casino and they like, look, I'm gonna get on roulette and I'm gonna win $50,000. And they'll put all that they have on that table because they believe in themselves so much. Okay. Then there's people that's like, look, I know I never win, so I'm just doing this for fun. I'm gonna put $5 in the slot machine. Now, none of y'all should be doing any of that stuff, right? Or if you whatever, that's your option. But when it comes to life, as a man thinketh, so is he. You have to think and believe yourself into a place before you actually get there. You have to be able to see it in your mind. There's nowhere that you've ended up in that you didn't see it in your mind, especially for good. Right? Thank you, Gail. There's no place like that. So when your identity is off, what you believe is possible for you is off. Now think about it like this. That means that your thoughts are impacted. And all of us make decisions based on our thoughts. When we tell kids, you got to think first, da 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 da. They think. It's just in that childlike state, they think that would be real cool and they just go do it, right? That's the beautiful part about children is they learn a lot in a short period of time because they have a thought about something, they act on it immediately. I'm not saying for you to act on everything immediately. You're supposed to mature from that childlike state. But when you think something big about yourself, you're like, let me just try it. Okay, $1 million in a month, let's do it. I'm at least try. And so the thought and getting excited about what you see is what inspires and motivates your will into action. And so you're really only acting based upon your thoughts and your belief system. Anything that you think continuously will end up being a belief system. Why? Because however you're thinking will turn into behavior. How you behave will produce a result, and those results end up turning into what you believe. I have a strong belief in prayer. Why? Because I've done it so much and seen the results from it. But it started off with me thinking, you know what? I mean, what I got to lose? Lord, I'm gonna talk to you about this. Let's see. We're gonna see if you really let me see something. And I've done it so much and seen the results that now you can't shake me about the power of prayer. You just can't. If you never try it and you think, nah, that don't work, you'll never do it. And you'll never see the results from it. And you'll never, ever, ever, right, unshakable. Thank you, Marquise. You'll never see that. And so it never gets the opportunity to become a belief system. So think about how your identity impacts what you think about yourself and what you're able to do. If that is limited or below the standard of God that has for you, you're going to always live below the standard of God for your life. Remember, he's going to always do his part. You got to do your part. And remember, as a man thinketh, so is he, is a spiritual law. It's not a suggestion. It's not hypothetical. It's not that. That is a law within the spiritual realm. How a man thinketh, so is he. So you got to think something different about yourself so that way you will begin to act upon those beliefs. And then not only when you start acting on those beliefs, you start attracting based on those beliefs. So now everything is truly working in your favor. Because people like, look, I don't know something. I don't know what you do. It's something different about you. How many of y'all have had that happen? Where you just, and any of y'all have that waking up, you feeling good, you doing this, you get yourself together, you do this, you go out in the world and people like, okay, I see you. And it may not have been your best outfit. It may not have been this, da, da, da. And then someone else like, I'm going to pay for your dinner. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Some of y'all men be like, yeah, I paid for some dinners just like that. Right? You know what? You looking for a job? I'm looking for this. I'm doing that. And it's just because you got that going in your mind. The difference is we have a mixed bag to where one day we wake up and we pulled out that part in the bag that told us we're a king or a queen. And the next day we pull out the mouse. We're like, So we're not getting that same result every day and allowing it to compound. So you got to really do the work of saying what parts of my identity are flawed, what parts of my identity are below the standard of God, and anything that's out of the will and standard of God is demonic. So on what part am I in agreement with Satan about who I am? God didn't call you ugly. Satan did. He was like, you ugly. Right? God didn't say you weren't worth nothing. That was the enemy speaking from out of a person, and you agree with it. Right? I believe it's one of y'all Bible scholars tell me, how can two walk together unless they agree upon a thing? I think that's in Amos 3. How can two walk together except they whew, this hurts my soul. Can two walk together unless they be agreed? Unless they be agreed. Period. So you you are only what you agree with. Just because they said it doesn't mean you have to agree. Just because it pressed into your mind doesn't mean you have to agree with it. I don't agree with every thought that comes to my mind. Just because it comes from my mind, just because a thought comes to my mind or something happens doesn't mean I immediately agree with it. I'm like, oh, hold on, that wasn't from God. That was from the enemy. No, because it doesn't become true until you agree with that thing. Absolutely does not. And you never want to walk together with anything that's below the standard of God for your life. You know, every time you look at yourself and you say, I'm ugly, you saying God is ugly. He made a mistake. Every time you say, I'm stupid, you're like, God, you must be stupid because you made me like this. Instead of saying, Lord, give me more wisdom. Or what do I know a lot about? What is the topic that I'm absolutely not stupid with? Right? Now I can be ignorant. Ignorant means I'm unaware of a certain hi Kirsten. Ignorant means that I just don't have the information. Like there's a lot of things I'm ignorant about, but stupid means you don't have the capacity to learn. And we're even those that previous, if you would have asked 30 years ago, right? Like if you would have said in the 80s, people who were autistic, people would assume that didn't have the ability to learn. We're learning that they learning a lot. They just not talking to us about it. But some of the most intelligent people in the world, you know, learning all kind of stuff, keeping it to themselves. Like, don't come in here. You might don't bring no stupid people in here, right? We're learning these things. So you're only going to be whatever it is that you agree with. Period. Last but not least, how you see yourself will also determine how your life ends. Meaning it determines the vision that you have for your life. If you have a lowered definition of yourself, then you're going to end up in a lowered place because you're just navigating yourself towards whatever it is that you see. That's it. Whatever you see in your mind's eye, that's what you're navigating yourself towards every day. Those of you who have accomplished something that was really difficult, right? You had to see yourself. No one went to medical school and didn't see themselves in a lab jacket. It's too much time and effort. At a certain point, you're like, I am going to be a doctor. You don't just be like, I wonder what it's like to be a doctor. No, at some point you have to see yourself like, yeah, you can see yourself walking through the hospital. You can see yourself doing that. You know, you see yourself doing this. Now, sometimes you land up on some things where it's like, Lord, I know I visioned it. I didn't know it was going to be like this. I saw myself. I didn't see everything, but okay, cool. That's cool. I asked. I just didn't know how it was going to come. So, you know, if your identity is off and how you picture yourself, how you navigate your life and where you're going to end up is always going to be in a lowered state than the original intention God had for your life. You're not going to even take hold of the provision. You're not going to even ask for the provision. You're not going to ask, look, throw me a lob. You know, I mean, throw me a lob. I done got there's been times where I messed up and like, Lord, I need you to get me out of this. I messed up. I'm open to however you do it. But I don't know how I ended up here, but well, I know how, but that was wrong. I'm gonna need you to get me out the situation. How many of you guys have asked God to get you out of a situation that you know you put yourself in? And he did it. Some of y'all, because I'll be like, I don't belong here. Lord, I done messed up. I don't belong here. If you have a lowered identity, you won't even recognize that you don't belong there. Be like, I ain't supposed to live nowhere with rushes. Lord, you're gonna have to make a way. You're gonna have to make a way. I know I messed my credit up. I did this, I did that. You're gonna have to make a way. Suddenly you see a sign for someone that ain't checking credit. And you live in this beautiful house, but you had the money. And they're like, oh, my computer went down. Don't worry, honey. Just come on in. Just drop your little deposit off. Whew. You won't even ask for it away because you're like, I guess I'm supposed to be here. No, ain't no way, Lord. This is something went off. You're gonna have to do something. I'm gonna act right. Today, I'm gonna act right starting today. Anyway, y'all, I hope that this has helped you. And the last part that I'm going to say is this is why this is so important. This is important so you can go get the others. When you go through the process of really defining yourself based on God's definition of you and what you can really achieve in that business, in that family, in your life, in your creativity, in your finances, in your networking, in every area, right? Once you start doing it, you can go and get the others because you don't want to be by yourself. You don't want to be by yourself. And there's people who need you. The only reason I'm able to do what I do is because I've been through it. I don't have the answers for everything, but I know what it's like to do this kind of work. And I know that this kind of work is usually the answer that most people have been searching for in the wrong places. You're looking for a quick fix, and really the fix is when you see yourself differently, you start doing things differently. You start interacting differently. You start attracting different people. You start doing all these things. So thank you guys so much for listening. So I have one thing that's happening tonight that I hope some of y'all join. Tonight I'm excited. It's called Bad Girls Gone Good Bible Study. This is for women like me. I'm not upset if a man joins. I'm just saying, but this is it. All right. It's for women like me who we didn't start off perfect. We didn't start off doing everything right, but we love God, or we're trying to figure out at least who he is. We're trying to do something. We want to understand the word, and we not coming in here pretending. And the basis of this is I'll name two important bad girls gone good in the Bible. The first one was the woman who anointed Jesus right before he got crucified. And they was like, she's a woman of ill repute. Well, guess what? He said she's gonna be known forever and still has been. The woman at the well who had 5 husbands was the first person to preach, was the first preacher in the ministry of Jesus, because she figured out, she's like, this man is the Messiah. And went and told everybody. The first evangelist was a woman with 5 husbands. And they did a mighty work. And some of y'all are like that. People who, and when I say bad, I don't really mean bad. It's just a good, cute turn of phrase that gets everyone's attention. But meaning you didn't start off right, but you're like, look, I'm ready to be right. And there's way more of us than them, and everyone else is just trying to pretend like they were the perfect ones. So join me tonight. It's going to be great. And hopefully it brings you more understanding. If any of you guys want to work with me one-on-one, click the link in my bio. If you need coaching in business, I've been doing that for about the past 10 to 12 years. Coaching and developing and mentoring entrepreneurs to hit their goals. Some of you guys, you're like, look, I really love this. I have no idea what I'm trying to do. And I have a workbook for you because I know that every single one of you has a God-given assignment path. You just need help figuring that path out, getting some answers. I have a workbook in my bio. Download it. I think it's $15. Fill it out today. If you just feel like you're just out here just kind of lost and wandering, you're just out here wandering, fill out the workbook because you're just wasting time. And you don't want to wander until you feel like it's too late. And you done gave all your good years to wandering around with no focus. And I was one of those people that needed to have a focus, because if I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling it. So if it doesn't ring as purposeful, I'm just gonna have fun today, which is good. There's nothing wrong with having fun, but eventually it's time to build your life. And if you don't know what your vision is, what your assignment is, what you want to do, you're confused, you're in the gray, you're like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want. What should I do? I don't know. And you're always in a state of confusion. Download the workbook and you will be not confused by the time you're finished filling that out. You can fill it out on your phone. If you use GoodNotes, you can print it out old school, however you want to do it, but do it. Don't waste any time. And then lastly, let's see. I have an event coming up called He Has More. It's going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. You guys will see that. I also have a small group. If you want me to put you in a small group, you can send me an email and saying, look, I don't know how that happens, but you're like, look, I want to be in this small group. We can do that. I'm trying to think of the last thing. And if you want to join the Bible study, it's 7 p.m. tonight. You can either do it on TikTok. I would recommend you do it on Zoom because I can see your responses and everything a little bit better than what I can on TikTok because there's a delay. But that starts at 7 p.m. I will do it live on TikTok, but I would prefer for you to join the Zoom so that way we can stay in communication. Because sometimes in TikTok, y'all come on here, unless you come on here regularly, which some of y'all do, like Donnie does. I don't really get to see you. I can't follow up with you. I can't continue to disciple you. I can't continue to do anything. It's just like hit it and quit it. So do that. So thank you guys so much. And I appreciate y'all. And thank y'all for the likes. Bye. Yay.